All right, hello and welcome to this VCT China Stage 1 Week 1 Pick'ems, where today we're going to talk about the 6 games that's happening this week in VCT China. They're starting in 2 days. Um, and basically, expect this one to be a bit longer than the other ones, just simply because it's the first week. So we have a bit more to talk about because a lot of roster have made changes. If I miss a change, I'm sorry. I tried to cover everything. I don't know if I did, but yeah. The other ones might be longer still as well because we're gonna cover the other games that's happened, but probably this one will be longest. So let's get into it then, to not make it too long. First game we have Sheila versus Billy Billy, where I feel like um, both these teams are. This is actually the only game where both teams have not made changes as far as that I know. And I think both of these teams are pretty good. As you see, PR it says for power ranking, and it's like my rating or power rating. It's like my rating of each team. And as you'll see in the future, I'm actually putting Billy Billy higher than Trace because of how badly Trace looked at Bangkok. Um, as I do feel like Billy Billy and maybe even Sheila, if EDG would have had a better start to the year, could probably have went to Bangkok if Trace didn't have that good of a start as well. Like I feel like Trace had such a good start to kickoff that they just went straight to the grand finals, meaning no team had any chance because everybody needed to be EDG. Which, if you know China and EDG, EDG has sort of well, yes, they are better than everybody, but they also kind of have a bit of a sort of thing where it feels like every single team crumbles playing against them. But yeah, so I actually think both of these teams looked really good, and I get why neither of them made changes. But going into this game, I'm gonna go with a bit of a boring pick here, as I'm gonna pick Billy Billy. Um, I want Sheila to be really good. I do. I think Sheila is a really fun team to watch with that neon and everything. I think they could look really good, but I think Billy Billy overall is just currently the better team. And although actually looking at the maps, I do think that because both teams ban fracture, it's gonna. I think the map pick is gonna be really interesting, but I do think that Sheila actually might be advantage here. I only have 5 maps as you see because obviously there's 2 new maps coming in that we haven't seen neither of these two teams play. But both teams ban fractures, so that's gonna be pretty interesting. Both have a pretty good Lotus as well. But I do think where it comes down to me is just we're gonna get one team is definitely picking Lotus, right? And then you're probably either gonna get Pearl or Haven, as the other team's pick. And I do think BLG, although they have a 33% win rate on Haven, look better on Haven than what Sheila looks on Pearl. And overall, I do think that Billy Billy is just sort of I don't know. I just have a bit more trust in BLG right now. I still have some more fun picks coming down, so don't worry. But this is just the first one, and I do think Billy Billy will win this one. Moving on, we have Trace versus All Gamers, which is going to be another boring one because All Gamers, a bit of an unknown roster. They got like 7 players, 7, 8 players with like 3 or like 7 players and 3 substitutes. So they have like 10 players on the roster. But with this roster, I just kind of looked at the players that they have on their VLR webpage, and they've changed a couple things around from before, but not really a lot. The main roster, I'm pretty sure, still looks the exact same that it did. Maybe some changes, but overall, yeah, they were just kind of the worst team in the entire world in kickoff, and I think that's probably going to continue. As you see, their rating is currently a 61, which is the lowest, I'm pretty sure. Um, and I mean Trace. I mean, yes, they looked bad in Bangkok. They didn't look terrible, right? Because it was still an international event. Like they were playing against the best teams in the world and didn't look good against them. But AG would probably get 13-0 to every single map if they went to Bangkok. So yeah, I'm picking Trace. Um, I do think though, if there's any time that AG could make an upset against Trace, it's probably right now. With how Trace looked at Bangkok, they were looking a bit shaky. Um, but anyways, moving on, we have DRG versus Nova, and this is where we're gonna talk a bit more. As we have DRG, which they've added a new head coach. They moved on from their old one and picked up Nathan D, the old FPX coach, that they used to have in like from like 2022 to like 2025. He was a head coach for he was a head coach for that Chinese FPX roster basically the entire time. And DRG looked good before. I do think head coach wise it might be an upgrade. Also, I'm a bit confused with this DRG roster in general. I do think they did look good, yes, but they've made one other change, which is they put in Kangshu in the main roster now and have parted ways with Tio's Luke. I don't know if I say that correctly. I probably butchered that. Tvirus Luke, I don't know. But my concern is every single time Kangshu has played for this roster, which I don't know much about Kangshu, but I just looked at the games he had played with DRG. He's been sort of like a sentinel controller, a bit of a flex player. Tvirus Luke was their duelist. And we know, like, Vukashu is definitely playing Senti, and neither of their other players, as far as I know, has ever played duelist for DRG. Meaning, I don't like Tito's Luke was not bad. Sure, he was not the best duelist in the world, but he was not bad. And we've never seen this DRG team without that duelist, so I'm a bit concerned. I do think DRG are good. I do think they were really good and was probably one of the teams fighting for Bangkok's places. But I'm a bit concerned. And considering Nova as well, who actually won the Evo tournament, sure, they made a change. They switched out Swirl for Obone, which Obone, we kind of know him from last year with China, playing for Nova. Basically, they're moving to a fully Chinese roster. Swirl was a really good player. Like he was like a top 15 ACS player in the entire tournament of kickoff. But I do think I get that they would change it because obviously it wasn't a fully Chinese roster. Now they have a fully Chinese roster. It's probably going to be a bit easier with comps and everything. And Obone is not a bad player. It looks like they're gonna change Obone to the Senti role, which he's more comfortable playing. And then Guang and CB, the ones who played kind of like a sort of Senti flex almost, are gonna have like sort of more of a duelist flex now. Um, that's what we saw at the Evo tournament at least. Um, the only problem I have is that neither player once again have played duelism much, but obviously they did end up winning that Evo tournament, so they did look really good. Um, Obviously, I'm gonna take that Evo tournament with a bit of grain of salt because teams like EDG and Trace literally were playing coach stacks basically in that tournament. So I take it with a bit of a slight grain of salt, but I will actually pick Nova here. I do think there are some question marks for me with DRG. I do think DRG overall will probably be the better team, but I do think with how good Nova has a couple maps which they are really good on, and Fracture isn't really a big Nova map, and Haven they ban, which is a map that DRG likes to play a lot. And overall, otherwise, DRG has not looked amazing on any of the current meta maps, current like in the map pool. Um, so yeah, overall, I just think Nova has a big chance to win here, considering also, as I said, they have a new head coach and I have some role issues that probably will be figured out throughout the season. But I think just in this first game, I think there's enough doubt here for Nova to take this, but also at the same time, I do think Nova has the potential to be a top team. So I do actually think that Nova eventually might actually be better than DRG, but I think this game specifically will be sort of an upset, but I do think Nova has a pretty big chance of winning this actually, and might even be my favorites going into it. And obviously, I picked them, so yeah. Now we move on to another pretty boring game. We where we have EDG versus Tyloo. So it's a top four team in the world, maybe top five, against Tyloo, one of the worst teams in all of China. Well, Tyloo has made a couple of changes. They part ways with Aaron, their duelist, who well, he was like one of the worst players. I get it. And they put in way two. And Nine Body is now fully moving to duelist. If I've understood it correctly, I think that's a good change. Wait is still a bit too much of an unknown for me to talk about much, but he did look good in the Evo tournament playing Astra. Um, I still with Nine Body though, moving on to Duelist, I'm a bit worried what their Senti role is gonna look like. But overall though, I still think they could look a bit better. I don't think they're gonna be a good team. Obviously, they were one of the worst teams. They changed up one player. Don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference, but I could see it looking better. I could see it looking better than it has done before. But obviously, I'm gonna pick EDG here. Not much of a surprise. EDG are still they're still um, the champs winning roster from last year, and they're playing in China now, which means they're gonna win basically every single game they play, maybe except against Trace and maybe Billy Billy. So yeah. Moving on. Now have JDG versus Wolves, where we have another game where neither team has really changed much as far as I know. And I think that's probably correct from both sides here. As I do feel like JDG and Wolves have two rosters that could look good. Like Wolves to me is one of those rosters that had so much potential and just fell kind of flat at kickoff and looked sort of like they looked like a worse version of this version's T1. Like they looked like they were just fragging. When they were winning, they were just fragging over everybody else, and when they were losing, they looked like completely lost. I do think they could change that, and I think with this the time they've had, they could have made changes to it, and it could look better. Um, and I do think actually JGG is pretty good as well. I do think JGG has one of those rosters where it's like, obviously um, they have EDG's old IGL, um, which I forgot the name of now. Haodong, yeah, Haodong. I'm pretty sure. If I don't remember wrong, this Haodong is on JGG, and obviously I'm pretty sure they have. No, wait, That's Tech. Wait, no, my bad, my bad. Either way, I do think JGG. Oh yeah, JGG is the Stu roster. It's the old Rare Adam roster. That got picked up, and I do think they could look good. I do though here end up going with Wolves, as I do feel like Wolves, although I don't think they can win in terms of firepower, I do expect Wolves to look better, and I feel like Wolves was expected to be a top team. I think JDG didn't change enough to be considered a top team, as they did look pretty bad last year. Um, so yeah, I'm picking Wolves here. Moving on, we have Fun plus Phoenix versus Titan Esports Club. And I will say, this is probably the game where there's the highest chance of being an upset that against FPX that Titan Esports Club has ever had. But I will still pick FPX. You don't really see the FPX logo, but yeah, FPX has a new head coach, obviously, or actually they don't really. I I think York is going to be the new head coach. Still, just says he's a normal coach on their webpage, but he did change it from assistant coach to coach. So I think he's the new head coach. And obviously, also Berlin retires, and they add Shrimp. Shrimp has been a decent initiator player in Tier 2 of China for a long time. I do, for no, maybe not a long time, but for a little while. Um, so I do think he's going to be a good pickup. Um, Berlin was obviously more of a smokes player, though. We'll see what happens with the roles there. But I'm also a bit concerned with the IGLing, but I do think this roster is good enough to probably be able to figure it out. I don't think they're gonna be one of the best teams in China, but I do think they could be if um, Shrimp could genuinely be like a Simon sort of deal, and they could look really good. But I do also think that genuinely FPX is not as good as EDG, like player wise. So I don't think it's gonna work as well. But I could see this being like a Simon change, um, where they changed out their obviously they changed out their IGL in Haodong for Simon, and now they look like one of the best teams in the world. Um, I do think FPX that they're kind of I think they're kind of doing the same with this change. Obviously, they changed their coach as well, which I'm pretty sure EDG did as well. It's kind of similar to EDG, but I just don't think FPX is as good of a team as EDG was at that time. So I do think they're going to be good. I just don't think they're going to be as good as EDG was, which I don't think they won champs last year. So nobody was as good as EDG was last year. But yeah, Tech goes from a 5 to 7 man roster, adds Furious Luke, the duelist on DRG, we were talking about before, and Coco, which are both good players, but it does question what roster they will play with to me. Like, I've never really understood these like big rosters, but I guess it works sometimes. But according to VLR, they're still playing the same roster for this game, which they were okay, but they were never really. They were probably one of the like. I think they're gonna be like a middle table team this year, maybe lower middle table, but they're still gonna be like an okay team. But obviously, I think FPX is more higher middle table than Titan Esports Club is. But I do think actually this game could be a lot closer than what people think. And that was it for week one. I hope you enjoyed this video, where I go a bit in depth of my pick'ems and my thoughts on each team. And like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.